Great day, everyone. I hope you are having an amazing Thursday. I am Trissetta Washington, CEO and founder of Profitable Productivity. And, I work with busy professionals, primarily nonprofit professionals, to help them get more out of their time, to be more productive without sacrificing their well being in the process. And if you've been following me for any length of time, you know I talk a ton about self care. And I often recommend journaling and meditation, things like that, as a way to de stress. And today I'm excited to be sitting down with Angela Perry to talk about how you can use journaling as a method to or a pathway to self care. Let me introduce her before I bring her on stage. Let me read you her bio. Angela Perry is a renowned journaling mentor who is dedicated to helping individuals, particularly empty nesters like myself, to find clarity, purpose, and peace through biblically sound journaling practices. With a wealth of experience and a deep understanding of the transformative power of journaling, Angela guides her clients on a journey from chaos to clarity. Her program, The Journaling Journey, is a structured approach that helps participants to rediscover their inner voice, align their lives with their deepest values, and create lifelong journaling habits. Angela's empathetic and insightful guidance has been instrumental in helping clients overcome various challenges, including insomnia, relationship issues, and the need to set boundaries. By fostering a supportive community and offering personalized journaling techniques, she ensures that each client's journey is unique and impactful. Testimonials from passing clients, such as Shay, highlight the invaluable emotional release and peace that they have found through Angela's mentorship. In addition to her one on one coaching, Angela is an advocate for journaling as a tool for corporate and educational settings, helping organizations foster emotional regulation, problem solving, and effective communication. Her dedication to her clients' well being and her commitment to their growth make Angela Perry a trusted and inspiring figure in the world of journaling mentorship. Please join me in welcoming Angela to the stage.
Hey, 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 hey.
Hey, Angela. It's so good to sit down and have this conversation with you. How are you today?
Yes, I am doing amazing. I had my morning walk, my morning tea, and so I am up and ready to talk all things journal.
Listen, it's funny because Angela and I just recently connected and we were having a conversation. I just loved this concept of journaling, using journaling as a release, right? As an emotional release. And so we hopped on a Zoom and we're just kind of talking and we just instantly clicked because I'm a huge advocate of journaling. I've been journaling or writing in a diary since I was a little girl. And it has been a huge part of my life. And there have been some major shifts and transformations that I've gone through as a result of the process of journaling. So I thought that we needed to have this conversation to dive deeper into it because I feel like other people need to hear it from someone other than just me because I talk about it all the time, right? Like I want other people to come in and share and talk about the power of journaling. But before we dig in, is there anything that share something a little bit about your personal journaling journey and how you got into journaling or got interested in journaling to begin with?
Oh my goodness. My personal journey, I stepped into it. I desired to do it as a kid, but like others that I keep finding is I didn't have the personal safety net, the space at home that made me feel like I could write my true and authentic thoughts in my diary. So it ex-nayed me from writing out my thoughts. But I went through a tragic time, and it was just a moment, I believe, almost, 30 years later. But I attempted to no longer desire to be here anymore. And when that ended up happening, I was recommended to start journaling at that time. So I would journal off and on, but the journey itself has helped me build businesses. It has helped me find a absolute foundational relationship with God. It has helped me write a book. All of these different things that transpired from a moment in time, it navigated me from here to where I'm at now. So, yes, that's where journaling has gotten me over the years. It's gotten me to talking about it so much that other people were like, where do I start? How do I get there? So that's how I ended up teaching other people how to journal and not just write journals.
Yeah, I love that because it's so it's so interesting how something that seems to be small or seems to be insignificant can have such a profound impact on who we are and how we show up in the world because journaling really allows us to process. And isn't it interesting that the very thing that we go through to save ourselves, we we end up oftentimes teaching others to do
Yeah.
as well. Because it typically happens kind of organically because people, like you said, they just start asking, like, well,
Yep.
how did you do that? Like, I see what you're doing. You're always doing this. How do you do that?
Mhm.
And it starts to kind of
Yeah.
take over.
It navigates, me and my husband, we do real estate and construction. And so outside of just, regular transactions of business, those are easy. It's you have a product and you do this, but nobody would know that in my hardest times when I'm crying in the shower, when I do not know what's next or how to deal with a client, that at night or in the morning, I'm grabbing my journal, I'm writing a plan out, I'm talking to God, I am cursing somebody out inside my journal. But over
We've
the
all
years,
been there.
it transitioned me into a better person.
In
I
what
was,
way?
oh
In
my
what
God,
way?
I was the person that I'm from Chicago. So I was the person that you crossed me and I felt it, I seen it, I heard about it. I was probably on B at your house that night, cutting tires and busting windows. I was her.
We're not judging.
I'm just being
We're not
honest.
judging because we've all done some things and been some versions of ourselves that we're not necessarily proud of.
Yeah. So I was her. I was the one that now they, is on Love and Hip Hop and is wilding out. I was her. Yeah. No longer.
What are some of the things that you've really gotten out of journaling? Like what would you say are the benefits from going through a consistent process of journaling?
The consistency allows me to process my thoughts. If you've ever been in a state of mind where you're like, what do I do? How do I solve this problem? I'm a problem solver naturally. So
Mm.
I'll stop exactly what I'm doing to go save somebody else. You got a problem, let me help you. So for myself, I was stuck with my own problems. I couldn't jump into action to solve my own problems. And so I began to write them out. map them out. My husband's a big drawer. He draws. And believe it or not, over the last 3 weeks, he has started journaling. We've been married almost 12 years or 13. I think it's 13. And he just now started journaling.
Wow.
Because he's like, does it work? And I'm like, yes. And so he's seen the effect of writing out his day, the highs and the lows, the emotions. He's like only taking, 4 minutes. He feels something, he's thinking, and he's just jotting it down. But at the end of the week, he's like, I never processed my day like this, let alone look back over it. And on the inside, I'm like jumping out my skin.
Oh my gosh, I get it. Because like when you know doing something has such a huge impact on your well-being or just your life in general, and you see someone else struggling and you know that this is something that can help, but they don't buy into it, it's hard, especially when it's a loved one, because it's like, I see you day in and day out and I see the struggle, and I know that if you would just do this one thing, it would be so huge for you. And so when they finally kind of hop on board or say, okay, well, I'll try, give it a try, and start to see the results and see the shifts, it's just, oh my gosh, as a helper, right? Because you're a helper too, as a helper, that just does my heart good. And I know for me, um, even though I've been journaling for the majority of my life, it's primarily been just kind of whatever whatever my thoughts are, kind of what happened for the day, whatever. Of course it's shifted from when I was a little girl, right? When I was a little girl, it was, oh, so and so said this about me, or this cute boy or whatever. But now, now it's like deep real life situations.
Yes.
But there is, I think when most people think about journaling, they think about more of a diary type journaling. But what we're really wanting to talk about today is more intentional journaling, using it as a tool to help you to offload heavy emotions, heavy situations, problem solve, so that you can start to create that inner peace and deal with some of the some of the junk, some of the gunk that's going on in our lives. And I shared this with you when we had our call, and I'll share an abbreviated version of it with the people now. But a few years ago, I remember I got a journaling assignment from a coach. And she was like, I want you to do a free writing exercise. And I didn't know, like, I had no clue what I was gonna be doing, and where it was going to go. But I sat down I took a break, and I sat down in my office with a legal pad, with a yellow yellow legal pad. And I literally started it. Lori gave us the assignment to do a free writing exercise. I have no idea what I'm doing. And I just allowed it to flow. Whatever came to mind, I just allowed that to flow onto the paper. 5 pages later, I had gone all the way back to my birth and uncovered some serious deep rooted trauma that I didn't even know existed within me, that explained a lot of my own personal behaviors, how I was showing up in the world. And it paved the way for me to address that and start to heal those aspects of me so that I could show up in a better light. Do you have any personal experiences, or have you had any clients who have had similar breakthroughs?
Yes. Yes. So not 5 pages. I guess it was. It could have been. So me personally, because I've actively done it so much, I'll go through phases depending on what I'm seeking at the time. So I could be in phase where I am doing gratitude journaling,
Mhm.
every day for 6 months, where I'm so in a rut that I know that if I show more gratitude, that it will activate the muscle of being happy and joyful, because that's what comes along the side effect of gratitude.
Yeah.
But the process that I went through with one of my clients, she had lost her grandfather. So she lost her grandfather while we were together. So we're going through training and everything. And we are journaling every day. We meet once a week. She's journaling. She's, let me know how she's feeling. If one day she just doesn't feel like writing, I am like, don't not write. Just write. I don't feel like writing. So we go through the process and we were done. 6 weeks later, this was a mini um, course, and we end up being done. And we do a debrief. So in the middle of our debrief, we're talking, and I'm asking her how's everything going, how XYZ, and she says about a couple of weeks ago, I slept for the first time in months. And I say, okay, what happened? She says one night she felt, she's looking at her journal next to her bedside, which I'm like, there's not just one journal, depending on what you're doing. I have about 5 laying around.
Guilty.
So I'm like, everything doesn't have to go in one, but you do need to begin to separate things, because even though we're whole people, we have separate things in different areas. So she's like, my nighttime journal is next to my bed and I can't sleep. I haven't slept in months. And it felt like God had illuminated my journal. And so she said she went to grab it and she wrote. She said she wrote in her journal for about 2 hours, an hour and some change, almost 2 hours.
Wow.
And she said she closed it, and it was the first time that she had slept all night in months. And she said she hadn't had a problem with sleeping since then. And I was
Wow.
like, I'm on the other end, and I'm just like I'm excited, but I'm like, this is what you assigned me to, and this is the result of that, God. So I'm in awe, because what I've set out for somebody to accomplish, sleeping, I didn't know was an issue, but it began to be an issue. Now she has a tangible result of journaling. What you've taught me, the exercises, the different techniques, has gotten me here. So it was like a confirmation of I am definitely doing the mission that I'm supposed to be doing in this season.
Yeah. So you brought up having different, multiple journals for different purposes and whatnot. What type of journaling do you, 'cause obviously there's different types. So if you have multiple journals, then there's different types of journaling. So what are some of the most common or most effective techniques that you recommend or utilize for journaling?
For someone, and it's a off and on activity, or you journal when you were a kid and you have not taken it on as an adult, I would always recommend gratitude journaling to be your first step, because I wouldn't say it's fairly easy, but it's a habit that could take you 5 minutes to
Mhm.
literally list from the crown of your head to the sole of your feet what you're grateful for. We're not even going to talk about gratitude about what's outside of you. Just being grateful. Okay, God, thank you for opening my eyes today. Thank you for like the basics.
Mhm.
You can always start there. Then you have reflective journaling, where you are writing in a manner of this happened, this is how it happened. And now when next week comes, next Friday, you open it up and you're like, okay, this worked, this didn't work. Let me change this up. I liked it, or let me double it up. You have planning as far as your business. You have a journal. I have one that is solely just for work. The cognitive, I go to a lot of business meetings and not concerts, but events and networking events where I take a lot of notes. Where if you're a big note taker, you have the more likelihood of retaining the information that you have just now learned or studied, and actually retaining it longer than if you did not take notes. Oh my goodness. You have what's another one? You have reflective, you have habit tracking. If you have a goal, whether it's weight loss, whether it's monitoring what you're trying to eat, if you're trying to track your activity, your physical activity, you have ways to track it where you have a sheet, a journal, whether it's printed out. I'm a big printer, like give me either sheets or journals, because we got these phones and they're so distracting.
Yeah.
And the moments you want to get your thought out is 5 dings. So I can put it to the side and I could just write. I can transfer my thoughts and my emotions to the paper and leave it there. So allowing that process is huge. It is
I love
ancient
that.
and it's huge because it literally is a transfer of energy.
It really is.
It really is. I have
I say all
burned.
the time, on paper, off the mind.
Yes.
Right. And I use that in the context of kind of like task tracking and, your to-do list or whatever, but still like even with, with journaling, it's the same concept. Brain dumping. That is also a form of journaling as well. Just kind of, and that's something that I recommend for my clients when they have if they have difficulty falling asleep, right? Just do a brain dump before you go to bed, everything that's on your mind, so that way you can, you can rest.
Nighttime journaling is what I call it. And they're like, nighttime. I'm like, yeah, do it literally right before you go to bed.
Yeah.
So
talking about I also do from time to time kind of like vision casting as journaling, where I'll write out how I want my day to go. It's like, what do I have to do today? What, and write it as if it's already done. Because one thing that, I have really learned is that when you imagine, when you're going through that process, because you have to imagine it if you're going to write it out, right? You fire up your RAS, that reticular activating system, which creates the neural pathways in your brain. And when you're doing something new, you're creating a new neural pathway, which is why it's kind of difficult when you're learning a new skill, because you've not done it before, right? So you're creating a new, and by journaling it, by writing out how I want my day to go or what kind of vision I have for my future, I create that neural pathway so that when I go to do it, it's easier for me to actually do the thing because I've already been there before. So that's those are two forms of journaling that I've done as well. Any other techniques?
You brought up vision journaling. That key, because that's what my first journal was about. And I took it an even step further. Is how do you desire your finances? How do you desire your Christmas? How do you desire your husband to be, or husband that he is? Like, what do you envision that relationship and those goals to look like? And so when you said that, I'm like, oh, I've done that one to the T, 30 days of it. And it's like taking them through that journey, because oftentimes we don't know what tomorrow looks like or what we want it to look like, because you just haven't taken the time to envision.
Yeah. Um, Earlier you brought up devices, right? You brought up our phones and devices. Have you, I know there's a lot of journaling apps now out there for you to, for you to do. I personally, I'm like you, I'm tactile, so I like to write. I like to physically write. Um, Rather than trying to type it out. However, I have also utilized doing video journaling from time to time or audio journaling, especially when it's something that I just really need to get out. I need to get it out quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And because we can speak faster than we can write.
Yes.
Have you ever utilized either of those forms of journaling?
I did audio this morning.
Oh, look at there.
I was walking and I was in a state of, I wouldn't say confusion, but I was having a creative moment and I have like 500 thoughts. And I was like, okay, Holy Spirit, we need to talk about this. So I turned it on because I wanted to reflect. So that was
Mhm.
the reason that I recorded myself, is because as I'm walking, I wanted to come back and reflect. So my envision, because I envision very well, I could paint a story and bring you in on it and you taking a ride with me. So, I was on a train and I was the conductor and I was riding the train and I was trying to explain, how do I get people to get on this train with me? What do I need to put up? What needs to be at the train station in order for these individuals that I am trying to save and bring them to the desires that they want? They need to get on this train. So how do I get them on the train? How do I keep them on the train? So I had a detailed hour-long conversation. I'll probably lapped 3 times than I was supposed to. But yes, audio journaling is beneficial as well. So it's not just the pen, but the pen is the quickest way to slow down,
Mhm.
the quickest way to make you pause and think about, what do I really want to say to myself? What do I really want to say if I'm talking to God? What do I really want to say if I'm trying to write a letter to someone that I lost? If I'm trying to write something to my boss and I don't like him and I want to express myself. So now how do I write this and then read it and now come back with a better solution versus coming into work with attitude and da 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 da. And it's like, oh, I fixed that this morning. I already know what I want to say. So, taking that time, that's what pen to paper does. It causes our brains and our hands to kind of slow down for a moment. But there are audio apps, um, different techniques and video that you can do to release. If you need to release and you can't find the pen and you can't find the paper, using those are a great substitute.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, the key there is kind of like that release. And the whole purpose of this conversation was for us to kind of talk about how you can use journaling to cultivate, to practice self-care or as a form of self-care and to cultivate that inner peace within us. How do you see What is your perspective on how journaling is? Because some people might say that's not self-care. Like what would you say to someone who's a non-believer in journaling as a self-care practice?
So when you recognize yourself, when you stopped, when you listen to your thoughts and you know yourself, a lot of times we know others. We know what it looks like, when our spouse or our children, and oh, I know exactly what they're going to do. I know that reaction. Well, we as a society are so tapered, so masked, that we don't create sacred spaces to learn ourselves. We think the thoughts that we have are bad. And if I run away from them and I don't sit with myself, then I don't have to deal with myself. I can deal with everybody else. I can solve other people's problems. Well, what happens is you end up deficient in areas. You end up overwhelmed. You end up physically sick, and the doctor can't find out why you have an ulcer. They have no clue why you keep getting migraines. Your blood pressure is constantly shooting up the roof, and you trying to change the food that you're eating, but there's more to it than just the food. And you don't want to stop and pause and resolve the things that are on your mind that you've never uncovered, the childhood issues that you are terrified of going back to. You would never think of those things ever. You wouldn't even ever say it out loud, let alone write it down. So the self-care factor is, over the years, we've buried things on top of other things, and we swept it under the rug, and we thought the rug was an incinerator, and it wasn't. It was just a rug. It's still there. You never healed it. You never swept it up. You never put it in the trash. You let alone won't let God touch it. You're like, I love you and all. I get it, but I can't let you touch that part of my life. And so the journaling allows you to uncover those things safely. It allows you to write it out. It allows you to process those thoughts safely without judgment. And now you can come back to it. And if you need help, okay, let me ask the therapist. I wrote all this stuff. I did a dump. I don't know what this means. So now you have something to go and unlayer and take with somebody else, whether it's me or a therapist or your pastor or your mentor. Now you have things that you can say, I wrote this. I don't know why I keep having these dreams, whatever it may be. That's what self-care means, is that I'm taking care of myself. I'm filling my cup. I'm throwing away the trash that's been sitting there so that I can properly help and love on those around me. My children get the best version of me. My boss gets the best version of me. My clients get the best version of me because I take the time to deal with this beautiful thing that God has created. So that's why that's self-care. Because otherwise, you walking around a ball full of stuff and wondering why everything is just getting wrecked left and right.
Yeah. And, we store all of that. We store all that stuff in our body. And if we don't ever, I like to think of it as giving voice to whatever is going on within us. Because when we think, think about like a kid, and they want something or they hurt, they will cry out.
Mhm.
And if you ignore them, they will just get louder and continue to go until you do something to soothe them. And I think that's what happens with like our emotions when we don't give them a voice, when we don't listen to them, when we don't pay attention to them, and we just try to shove them down. They find a way.
Help.
Yes, they find a way to get your attention. And
Mhm.
sometimes that means manifesting as some sort of illness or disease in your body. Sometimes that means manifesting in insomnia or migraines or an inability to focus, an inability to move, depression. All kinds of things can manifest as a result of not giving your emotions a voice. And so journaling really allows you to do that. And I think too that it makes it easier for you to, journaling can be a really great way for you to break that mental spiral. Right? When you get caught, when something happens and you get swept up in the emotion of it, and you start that downward spiral to worst case scenario, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and you don't know how to get your way out. Journaling can be a vehicle for you to release all of that so that you can, it's kind of like that allow yourself to be spit out of the
Mhm.
tornado or the whirlpool or whatever it is, right? It gives you
The
that, it gives
Matrix,
you that,
let me out, unplug me.
yes, yes, it gives you that out of that downward spiral so that you can um, step outside of it and view it as a almost like a third party as opposed to being in it,
In it.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so what about those people who maybe they do journal, but just not struggle with being consistent in journaling? What advice would you give to that person?
With inconsistency, think about it like this. What happens if you only brush your teeth 3 times a week over the next 20 years? They get clean, every once in a while, but over time, they decay faster.
Yeah.
Over time, you never really fully get a deep clean because you never go to the dentist. If you're only brushing your teeth 3 times a week and you have 7 days in a week, the likelihood of you going to the dentist are slim. So you never go to the dentist. And next thing you know, you're 40 years old and you're losing 3 teeth. And you're like, but I brushed my teeth every once in a while. And you just don't know why. You never had the professional, you never had the doctor look at it, spray them down, clean them, do the extra work, and then you never kept up maintenance. So journaling is maintenance.
Yeah.
It's a daily maintenance. It's a habit that you create. Um, and if you don't, then the question more so was what to do. So how do you maintain that? Is you set a timer.
Mm.
Like I said, start with gratitude, because if I'm able to start somewhere, that means we have habits that we do not like, and we have habits that we do like. We have
Fact,
habits that
fact.
we've grown to love. We didn't like, putting socks on and shoes and drawers when we was 2 years old, but now we're like, where are my underwear? Because I don't want to go outside without them. So creating a habit that you once might not have enjoyed, and you look at it in a perspective of, this new habit that I'm creating, I want to be consistent in it, because if I'm consistent in it, it'll help me in different areas. It'll help me build that relationship. It'll help me be healthier. It'll help me be.
Yeah.
So don't just look at, oh my gosh, I got to write again. I don't feel like writing, but look at what the goal of it is. What is your real goal? If you go in with a goal, if we're trying to obtain $1 million grant, you're going to do everything that requires you to do every day for the next XYZ months to obtain that goal to get the grant. So look at it in a joyful way. What is it that you're looking for? What's the goal of your journaling? Are you trying to fix something? Are you trying to prevent something? Are you discovering something? What is the purpose of you starting the journaling journey? And now it'll make you become more consistent, because you're looking at the goal now. You're not necessarily looking at the writings.
Yeah. What about I love that, having a goal in mind for the reason for the journaling. A dear friend of mine always says when you know your why, the what makes sense. Right.
Yeah.
So when you have that overarching why you're doing what you're doing, when you have that goal, it helps you to stay committed to the process of doing it because it's tied back to that deeper why.
Why?
So that's really great advice for, for newbies or people who are struggling with consistency. What about, people like you and I who have been journaling for a while and really want to deepen their
Mm.
practice of journaling, are there some advanced techniques that you could recommend for those of us who want to dive deeper into our journaling experience as it relates to self-care?
Oh my goodness. There is a new technique that I've been kind of on the edge about doing it. Pendergrass, he put it out, I think it was in the 80s, but in my studying, because you have to learn to grow, I've discovered it, and it's about trauma, healing trauma. And it's one where it kind of takes you really, really deep. Like you write about the trauma for four-day time span. And at the end of it, depending on which level you went to, it'll either become very hard in the beginning or very easy in the beginning, and vice versa. But there's always new ways, to new reasons, new whatever season you're in. If you have been journaling for years, you have thoughts upon thoughts upon thoughts. What more could you get? And it's like, for me, my example would be, I have the Bible, right? And I read it, sometimes every day, sometimes a couple times a day, depending on how busy life has gotten. And I know that it keeps telling me that I get new mercies every day. I know that it tells me that the more that I read it, the more that I communicate with God, the better that I'll become in different areas. Well, I'm constantly learning when I open up the same scripture I've opened up 30 times. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was a new revelation, right? So you're like, I didn't see this when I read this 10 years ago. So it means different when you're in a different space. So if you've done something for so long and you've never changed up the technique, you've never vision casted, you've never reached into, okay, well, what does it look like if I actually dedicated myself into discovering something new? I want to start a new business. What does that look like for me? I have these ideas. Let me map this out. So now you're literally starting a new business journal, and you're mapping things out, and you're looking up statistics, and you're trying to gather the thoughts, and you're giving yourself a time limit, but you're journaling in a different manner now than your typical, oh, it was nice outside, everything was good. And that is, let me back up. You could have been journaling for years, but if you have been lying in your journal, it is ineffective.
Ooh, not lying in the journal.
If you have been lying in your journal, it is ineffective, because that's not the purpose of it. I've talked to countless people, and they're like, yeah, I write every day. I write something. I'm like, what are you writing? Everything was cool. But then you're telling me that you got all these problems, but in your journal, you like, God is good, or, I meditated today and this, and this. And it's like, but you really didn't map out the problem to solve it.
Yeah.
So your reflections mean nothing, because you can't even recall what happened a year ago inside that journal, because it's a lie. It was not sunny. You got into a huge argument with your husband. Your mama dropped the kids off at the wrong time, and she was disrespectful, just like always. And you never told the truth in it. You put it as a sugarcoating item, and you were like, everything's fine. And you wonder why you can't solve no problems. I journal all the time. And it's like, really?
But
Oh,
wait, Angela, I got one for you. What about people? Maybe people do that because they're afraid that their loved ones are going to
okay.
um
Find it.
read it. Because
Mm-hmm.
listen, I have experienced that. I
Mm-hmm.
have experienced that where I poured my heart out because that's my place where, like, oh, Ross Jack says that's the place where she tells it like it is, right? Like, who's out here lying? But some people do that because they're afraid, they want to journal, they want to commit to the process, but I'm afraid that one of my loved ones is going to find it and read it, and now they're going to be upset about something that I wrote. Because hey, I had that happen to me. I had my spouse read my journal, found it and read my journal, and was upset about something that I wrote in it. And the crazy thing was, what I wrote was not even that bad. Like, I had written much worse stuff than that. But
and you
and I'm
found
like, you would be upset about that? So like, what do you say to that person who maybe gave up journaling or is afraid to tell the truth in their journal because of fear of someone reading their thoughts?
So this is one space where I recommend using the app. I recommend doing the voice note and locking it, where the lock is you the only one that have the code, because I've ran across individuals and they've texted me and they've called me and they DM me and was like, I can't journal. My thoughts are being invaded. My husband or my spouse found my journal again, and then it caused another argument. So in that space, I recommend the apps because it allows you a sense of safety where you still are able to get it out, but you can put it under lock and key where they can't find the images and they can't find your actual voice or your writings in it. So that's one of those spaces where I'm like, by all means necessary, if you got to go to the park on your way, write it, do it, whatever, throw the paper away, lock it up in your phone, and now you literally still have a space. Even if you got to carve it out and dig it up out the dirt and put it back in the dirt, you still have a space.
Not the time capsule. Okay.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, this has been an amazing conversation. For those of you tuning in live, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat. I do want to ask you one more question before we prepare to close out. What kind of final piece of advice, if you will, would you give to someone who wants to start using journaling as a tool to release emotionally and to as a form of self-care?
For those that are entering into usually it's a shift change. It's something that you either desire, something that you're trying to get out of. It's been pressed upon you and you're like, I can no longer hold capacity for the thoughts that are constantly rotating merry-go-round in my head. Start with one day at a time. Just set the timer. I'm adamant about 15 minutes just to give yourself the space. But if it's only 5 minutes, and just write whatever it is that comes to mind. And if you begin to put it into place, it'll then become something else. It'll snowball into something bigger. But you got to know the why. Why do you want to start journaling? And once you ask those 7 layered whys, the 7 whys, you can begin to uncover, okay, this is why I want to do this. Something's happened, whether it's I'm scared, I'm 54 and my mother passed at 54 and I'm approaching that age, or whatever the fear that's holding you, or whatever the goal, and you're now like, I think I should start doing this. I think this might be the tool to get me to the next level. I think this might carry me over the threshold. To take it one day at a time. Set the timer, do 5 minutes, but just sit there. You might not come up with no words. You might need journal prompts. I got tons of those, depending on the situation and the problem. But understanding the goal that you're seeking before you start, it'll take you further than when the days come that you don't want to write. When the days come that you don't even want to think. The days come where you're breaths away from depression, and writing is like your only way out. Like I've been depressed. I know what that looks like. I know what it feels like. And you just, well, you're literally holding it in your hand and you're just like, I don't know what to do. So whatever the reason is, take that 5 minutes, start to set the timer, be intentional, just like you are about eating, just like you are about your loved ones. Be intentional about yourself, because this is something that no one else can do for you.
Yeah.
Nobody else can write in your journal but you, unless you're doing a couple's journal or a kid's journal. Those do exist.
Well, you mentioned that you mentioned that you have some prompts and whatnot. How can people connect with you? How can so that they can get access to your journals or to your prompts and whatnot?
If you go to alwaysangie.com, 2 L's ALLWY, always Angie, ANGIE.com.
It's like on the screen.
Oh, you can go there and grab the links. I have some prayer prompts. If you go to the bio inside of LinkedIn, they're easily accessible there as well. And you can download them. You can join the newsletter. I send out prompts and activities every Friday. So that's one of the perks of being on my newsletter, is I always want to have something that I can give, whether it's a quiz, just to make you think a little bit deeper about where you're at in your life. So being able to do that is kind of like my give back.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the steps and the tools, and it'll hook you up to my Amazon store as well. So you can purchase journals.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, this has been a really great conversation. And there's so many other, so many other aspects of journaling that we didn't even get into today. Like I started a couple years ago doing prophetic journaling and really tapping into the Holy Spirit. So like there's, we'll have to do part two and go deeper into this conversation on journaling, the power of journaling for self-care and inner peace. But I want to say thank you, Angela, for agreeing to sit down and have this conversation with me. I believe that those who have watched us live and those who will come back and watch the replay, that they will gain some great value from the advice and the tips that you have shared with us on today. And for those of you who maybe you want to start journaling and but you're like, Tressetta, Angela, I ain't got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. I don't have time. My schedule is already super busy. It's already jam-packed. I don't have time to fit another thing onto my schedule. Then I want to encourage you to book a discovery call with me, because that's what I do. I will help you to go through all the things that you have on your to-do list, all the things that you've got going on in your life, and help you to identify what those priorities are so that you focus on the things that matter most, mainly your self-care. So you can go to chatwithtressetta.com to book that complimentary 30-minute discovery call. I hope that I hope that you will take advantage of that, as well as take advantage of connecting with Angela and getting some of her journaling prompts, or maybe even purchasing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 of her journals. And here we go. Jacqueline says, this was helpful. So thank you for tuning in. And I'm glad that you found what we talked about today helpful. And we will do a part 2 to go a little bit deeper and talk about some of the other aspects of journaling that we didn't get into today. There's just so much. And who would think, you might think, how could you possibly talk about journaling for an hour or more than an hour? It's like, listen, every single topic, there's going to be experts. There's going to be people who can go deeper, because we don't realize how much we don't know until we're exposed to more. And so we'll definitely have to come back and continue this conversation another time. But thank you again, Angela, for joining me today. And to all of you out there, oh, my pleasure. And to all of you out there on LinkedIn and on YouTube, like I always say, take care of yourself and each other. And I'll see you again real soon. Have an amazing rest of your day.